Hey guys, my name's Devin. I'm an aspiring level designer. Today I'm going to show you the spawn camp prevention script that myself and another level designer named Esteban Lopez, we developed it for the game The Afflicted, which I'm going to be showing you right here, right now. We just came back from GDC 2013. We were able to show The Afflicted off at GDC Play. I can show you more about that in my portfolio. I'll link that in the description below. We got to show off this game to everybody, and people seem to enjoy it. But you can see more about that later. So right now I'm going to demonstrate to you really quickly how the spawn camp prevention script works in the realm for The Afflicted. So let's jump in real quick and play. Now The Afflicted has 3 teams, the Pigs, Psychos, and Savages, and each team has a team number associated to themselves. So the Pigs are Team 0, Savages are Team 1, and Psychos are Team 2. So those are the numbers we use to reference so that we can pass through these screens right here. The ones that say Pigs on it, since I'm on the Pigs, I can pass through this screen. So now if I run to another team's base really quick, let me go to the Savages. They are Team 1. I cannot get through it. I get trapped on the outside. So let me just confirm that with the Psychos team base as well. And then we can go in and see how we created it, and then we'll create it on our own. So if I run up to this screen, I get stopped. So we know it's working. So let me back out really quick. Let me jump into Kismet really fast. And I'll show you how we did it for The Afflicted. And the way we did it for The Afflicted is going to be a different way than what we're going to do for this demonstration, where I'm going to show you how to make it yourself. So we have prefabs associated with each of the screens in front of the bases. So for each base there are 2 screens. So right here are the 2 pigs ones. So let's jump into it. It's kind of unorganized. But alright, now that we got cleaned up, we can look at it much easier. Now what we use a trigger volume for client side only, because we don't have to check this over the network or anything. So with the trigger volume, once it gets touched, it gets the team number of whoever touches the trigger volume, and then whatever the team number is, we compare it to what team number we want. So if we want to go into the pigs base is represented by the team number 0. So if the team number of the player touching the trigger volume is also 0, we're going to toggle on and off a blocking volume that blocks the players from entering or lets them in. And we have to use a dynamic blocking volume so that we can reference it in Kismet. If it was just a normal blocking volume, we wouldn't be able to turn it on and off. So this is a very, very simple solution that me and Esteban came up with, and we were able to it was able to work, and it works pretty well, because before we had this, people would just stay at each other's bases and just kill each other as we came into the game. And this is kind of our Team Fortress-esque solution. So that's how we did in The Afflicted. So now I'm going to show you how we're going to do it in a normal team deathmatch style of Unreal Tournament. So let me get out of the Afflicted build. I don't want to save anything. So right here, right now, I have a simple scene set up. And basically how the scene works is if I'm on the same team as this represented door is for which base, it will open. So for Unreal Tournament and a team deathmatch, there's a red team and a blue team. The red team is put automatically to team number 0, and blue team is put into team number 1. So right now I have set up, let's see what I have it set up. I have it set up at 0. So the door should open when I touch the trigger button. And we see it does. So I'm able to pass through, no problem. And if I put it to team 1 or 2 or anything but 0, the door will not open. As you can see, the door's not opening, so it's working. And we'll take a quick look. It's very similar to the Afflicted builds version, except instead of blocking instead of a blocking volume turning on and off, we're playing an animation for our door to open and close. So it's very simple. So let's start this from scratch. So I'm going to do a new level. I'm going to do afternoon lighting. I don't want to save anything. It doesn't matter which lighting you choose as long as you just open a default map like this. So the first thing we're going to do is I want to change the world properties of this map. In particular, I want to change the game type, and I want to change that to team game. UT team game. It's kind of hard to say, but that's what we want. That allows us to do a red and blue team, so we're able to easily get our team numbers. If it was just a strictly UT game or a deathmatch, AI and players are given random numbers, so it's harder to control in that aspect. But since we're doing teams, you're either team 0 or team 1, so that's why we're doing that. Now that we have our game type set up correctly, we're going to have to drag in a few items from our content browser. If you saw on my scene before, I had a door and a door frame, so let's grab those meshes really quick. So let me go down to UT game, UT3. I'm going to type in door. I'm just going to filter it for static meshes. Scroll down, here's our door frame, and here's our door. So I'm going to position the door in the door frame as best as possible. Luckily these meshes were made together so they're able to fit properly. Alright, now that I have them together, I'm just going to position them in the correct way that I want. And that's basically how simple our scene is going to be in terms of static meshes. But one thing I want to do now, I want to convert the door itself to a mover, because we're going to animate it to open, and in order for some objects to be animated they have to be interdactors and turn into movers. So once you turn an object into a mover and an interdactor, their collision goes away. So we want to turn the collision back on. So select the object, press F4 to bring up its properties, and then type in collision and the filter search on top, and then find collision type and change that to block all. Now it should block everything. Now the next and final step that we're going to do for our scene setup is we're going to set up our trigger volume that we're going to need to touch, and that triggers our event to fire. So taking our red builder brush, let's manipulate it so it's as centered to the door as possible. So I'm going to manipulate the height. What I'm doing here, I'm going to geometry mode, and that allows us to move individual faces or individual vertices, just like we would in any kind of 3D modeling program like 3ds Max or Maya. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select the top face. I'm just going to drag that down so it's about the height of the door that we want. And next I'm going to hold Control Alt and left click drag marquee select the two top left vertices. And then I'm going to drag those just so they get the shape of the door as accurate as possible. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom left two vertices and just get that shape going. And do the same thing on the opposite side. Make sure you have both selected. Now this is a good size, so I'm going to leave it at. Now that we have our builder brush the size that we want with our door, we're going to have to create a trigger volume, and a trigger volume can be found on the left side of the editor under volumes, and on the right hand button that looks like an isometric cube, we're going to left click, and it displays a bunch of different kinds of volumes we can create, and it's in alphabetical order, and we're looking for trigger volume, so it's at the bottom. So trigger volume, select that. Now if we move our red builder brush, we should be able to see it, and it's highlighted in green. We did this kind of setup for the pressure pad puzzle, so if you haven't checked out that tutorial, you should check it out as well. There's some good info there. But this trigger volume allows us to trigger events based on touch, and if a player touches this volume, we can set it so an event fires, and the event is going to be the door opening based on the team number. And also a fun fact, if you press O on the keyboard, that toggles the visibility of volumes that aren't selected. So if I select the light mass importance volume in the background, hit O, everyone else is hidden except for the builder brush. That stays default there all the time. So just keep that in mind. If you ever lose a builder brush, try pressing O and see if it's hidden somewhere in your scene. If not, you can always look for it using this Find Actors button. It lists all of your actors for you. So all you have to do is double click on one. So brush 0 I'll just click on, and that's my builder brush. Now if I go to trigger volume 2, that's my trigger volume. So it brings you to it. So it's not, so once your scene gets cluttered, it's gonna be harder to find objects. So make sure you keep track of everything right from the beginning. All right, now that we have our trigger volume set up, we can now start scripting in Kismet. So let's open up Kismet. Unlike all the other tutorials that I've done so far, that is the pressure pad puzzle script, as well as the shield regeneration script. Both of those used a bunch of variables that we set in the beginning just so we can reference different numbers and variables. We're not really going to need that right for this example since it's super simple. So there's no need for that. So we can get right into it. So pull the Kismet window aside on the left so we can see our scene as well. And with our trigger volume selected, I'm going to right click in Kismet, and down here, new event using trigger volume _2, I'm going to do a touch. So basically whenever an actor touches this volume, we want something to happen. So touch types, under its properties, we're going to leave that at pawn. If you had a specific game type they were using, for the Afflicted we had a specific pawn called AF pawn. So if we were doing it for that game, we would reference AF pawn over normal pawn, but since it's just default Unreal Tournament, we're just using pawn. Next, we're going to check the use instigator property. And basically what the instigator is, it's the instigator who starts the event. So basically whatever touches this is our instigator. And lastly, we're going to change the max trigger count from 1 to 0 so that this event can fire an infinite amount of times. 0 represents infinity, not 0. And 1 represents 1, but we want it to fire as many times as we want. So that sets up this initial event. But before we get into another node, we're going to set up our instigator. And so what we're going to do, we're going to right click on the instigator, the pink triangle, and we're going to do create new object variable. And it gives us a blank object variable, which we want. We want this to be blank because once an instigator is established, that object will be placed into this empty object variable. So if I touch this trigger volume, I become the instigator, and then I am placed into this object variable. I'll give this object variable a name. I'll just call it player, just so we know who is most likely going to be touching this. So now the next thing we're going to do is once someone touches the trigger volume, we want to get their team number. And luckily there is a node in Kismet that does just that. So we're going to go to right click, new action. We're going to go up, we're going to go down to team, and then get team number. This is a very simplistic node. So on touch, we want to plug the touch output into the in input of get team number. And now for our target, we're going to plug the target into this blank variable, which will be our player or whoever touches this volume. So if it's an enemy, that enemy player will be placed into this each time this trigger's volume is touched, a new instigator is placed in. So it keeps refreshing. So if I touch the trigger volume and then someone else touches the trigger volume, the most recent person touching that trigger volume is placed into this instigator. So now for team number, we're going to need a default blank integer variable. So there's multiple ways we can set this up. The first one is going into new variable, go into integer and then int. Or the shorter way is just the right click on the team number, the light blue triangle, and then create new int variable. The default variable is 0. So automatically it's set at 0, but that will be replaced with whatever team number the instigator is. So if the instigator is team 2, this team number will become the number 2. It won't be 0 unless the team number for the player who touches it is 0. So I'm going to give this a variable name of team number just so we know. So that's set up. Now the next thing I want to do, I want to compare the team number integer with the team number of the base it's associated with. So what I mean is if this door is the entrance to team number 0's base, we want to compare team number 0 with the team number of the player who's touching it. So if the team number of the player touching it is 1, but this door represents team number 0's base, the door should not open. So we're going to get a compare integer node out. So right click, go to new condition, comparison, compare integer. So now I'm going to plug in the A to the team number variable 0 here, and I'm also going to plug in the output into the input of the compare integer node. So now we're going to create a new integer variable. So I'm just going to create one so we know how to do it. So new variable, integer, integer. I'm also going to give this a variable name. I'm going to give this a variable name called base team number. Now, if this is going to be our base, then the team base number is going to be 0. So that's what we want. So the next thing we're going to do, now we have to animate our door to open and close. So basically, if the team number of the player is equal to the base team number of the trigger volume it's associated with, this door needs to open and then close. So we're going to create a new matinee to make that animation happen. So right click, do new matinee, double click on the new matinee node to open up matinee in a new window. Now before we do anything, we need to make sure our interactor is selected. So that's our door. Now that it's selected, we can go back into matinee. We're going to right click over here in this dark gray space, do add new empty group. I'm going to call this door underscore open, but you can name this whatever you want as long as you understand its meaning. Now with the new group, right click the new group and find add new movement track. Now that's what we want because we want to move the door up and down, left or right, however you want this door to open. Now we want the time of the matinee sequence to be 1 second. So I want you to left click and drag this red arrow to the left just to bring the time as close to 1 as you can. I have snapping enabled, and snapping can be enabled if I maximize this. Up here, you'll first need to toggle the snap on and off in order for this to work. So toggle the snap, and then choose however snaps you want. Right now I'm at 0.1, so if we bring this to 0.5, I'll only be able to go 0.5s to 0.5. So I wanted something pretty fine, but not too fine where it gets confusing, so 0.1 worked for me. So now that our timeline is set up for 1 second, we can start animating our door. And when you create a new movement track, it automatically creates your first keyframe for you. So all we have to do is create a second keyframe at the 1 second mark. So creating a new keyframe, that's by pressing enter on your keyboard at whatever time interval you want. And I said 1 second, so that's where we're putting it. Now with the second keyframe selected, I'm going to drag this door upwards until it looks open. So that looks good. And as you can see, there's a yellow line that represents the translation that we made with this door. So if I slide this slider back and forth, our door will open and close. That means it's working. And you can also press the play button up here just to see the animation play. So that's working. So I'm going to exit out of matinee. And now all we need to do now is just connect the remaining nodes so that the events and actions will fire appropriately. So what we want to happen when these two numbers equal one another, we want to play our animation. And once the animation is completed, we want the animation to go in reverse so that door closes. If we didn't do this, the door would just open and then everyone would be allowed into the team base. We want that door to close as soon as it's done. For the purposes of this tutorial, I put an activate delay on this for 1 second so it doesn't close right away. So to do that, just right click on the output completed and select set activate delay. And the default is 1 second, so just press enter or OK. Now we got our activate delay. So it takes 1 second after completion to reverse the animation. Now what we want to do is untouched, we want this to go into reverse. So once we stop touching the trigger volume, the door will also go in reverse. And then that should be it. So let's go in and test this. So right now the door should open because we have the base team number set to 0, and which is our team number as well. So let me jump in. And it should open, which it does. Now to just double check our work, let's go back into Kismet and let's change this base team number to 1. Now in this case, the door should not open, which it's not. So we know that it's working. Awesome. So let's build light real quick. And while we're building light, I'll just take a few moments just to conclude a lot of things. So this is how the Afflicted, in a nutshell, did our team spawning camping prevention script. So now enemy teams can't get into your base and kill you, which was a huge problem. And it's a similar solution to Team Fortress if you've played that game. So if you want to see more about the Afflicted, I'm going to link to our IndieDB page in the description below. I'll also link you to the section of my portfolio where you'll have access to this level, so you can see the work firsthand if you had trouble following me at all. I'll also have a link to our IndieDB page for the network, which is another project I'm working on. And also make sure to check out my blog post about GDC Play, so you can check out what the Afflicted did while we were there. We handed out a bunch of copies of our game, we got a lot of cool feedback. And you'll be able to download some of the levels from the Afflicted onto your desktop through my portfolio. You'll have to find it. I'll actually link you there in the description below. And I'll also link you to Esteban Lopez's portfolio, because he helped with the initial inception of the idea of this Kismet script, as well as helped make it. So I hope you learned a lot. Definitely subscribe to my channel. Like the video if you enjoyed my work and you've learned from it. And also comment in the comment section below. Definitely tell me if I did a good job, what parts were confusing, things that I can improve on, or if there's an aspect of the Unreal Development Kit or Kismet or any kind of tool found in this editor that you want me to go over or you're confused about, because I'm very fluent in all aspects of the Unreal Development Kit, so I'll be able to help you out and make a tutorial for you. So please comment in this comment section and I'll get back to you. So thanks for watching and have a great day.